It is a distinct honor and pleasure for me, on behalf of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, President Adam Barrow, the government and the people of the Republic of the Gambia, to welcome you all to the smiling coast of Africa, the Republic of the Gambia, the historic home of the African Commission on Human Rights, as the opening of the 85th Ordinary Session of this distinguished body. Your presence here today is a reaffirmation of Africa's collective commitment to the advancement of human dignity, justice, and freedom, ideals that inspired the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights almost 75 years ago, and that continues to animate our continental vision under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the African Union 2063, the Africa we want. This session convenes at a time of global turbulence and regional transition, a period in which the universality of human rights is being tested as never before, and when the African human rights system must demonstrate that it can translate normative commitments into tangible protection for our people. Excellencies, across the world, we are witnessing growing pressure on the international human rights order established in the aftermath of the Second World War. Conflicts in different regions continue to exert a devastating toll on civilians and global institutions. Democratic backsliding and populist politics have eroded freedoms, inequality and displacement are rising, and technology has become a new frontier of surveillance, misinformation, and exclusion. The very principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, equality, justice, and universality are being challenged by selective application, politicization, and competing national interests. Excellencies, even in regions long considered stable in justice and human rights, we are growing intolerance towards dissent, sprinkling civil spaces and legal frameworks that criminalizes protest and stifle independent voices. Humanitarian crises from Gaza to the Sahel, from Ukraine to Sudan, are reminding the world that the protection of civilians and the sanctity of life remains fragile. In this landscape, global landscape, Africa must continue to stand as a moral voice, not as a victim of global disorder, but as a continent demonstrating that human dignity, justice, and solidarity are not foreign imports, but African values deeply rooted in our own tradition and our charter. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our continent has made notable progress over the past decade. The adoption of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the Maputo Protocol on Rights of Women, and the establishment of the African Court on Human and People's Rights have given Africa a comprehensive legal and institutional architecture for the protection and promotion of rights. We must also recognize the role of the African Commission as the custodian of the Charter and as a voice for the voiceless. The Commission's work, including its country's mission, reporting procedures, and resolutions, continues to shed light on situations of concerns and to offer guidance to state parties. However, the reality before us remains sobering. In many African countries, conflicts and constitutional change of government and internal insecurity have devised hard-won gains. Civilian populations in Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Mozambique, and parts of the Sahel continue to endure immense suffering and displacement. Civil space is shrinking under respective laws. Human rights defenders, journalists, and environmental activists faces harassment and also reprisals. Women and children bear the brunt of the armed violence and socio-economic exclusion. And while the African courts continue to issue landmark judgment, compliance by state remains uneven and in some cases resistant. We must confront these realities with honesty. The gap between the commitment we make at the continental level and their implementation on the ground is also widening. This is the challenge the African Union and its human rights organs must now confront with resolve, coherent, and political will. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union has placed human rights at the center of its transformative vision. Agenda 2063, the African we want, is not only a development blueprint, it is also a human rights roadmap. It envisions an African that is peaceful, just, inclusive, and governed by respect for the rule of law. To realize this vision, our continental organs, the African Commission, the African Courts, and the African Committee on Rights and Welfare of Child must act in complementarity, guided by the recently adopted complementarity roadmap. This framework must not remain a document. It must become a living instrument for accountability and coherence. In this regard, we must empower the Commission to conduct fact-finding missions swiftly, enable the Court to ensure compliance with its judgment, and integrate human rights safeguards into the AU's peace and security interventions, as well as its flagship development project. The African peer review mechanism and the Agenda 2063 monitoring should incorporate human rights indicators so that progress on governance and development is measured alongside freedom, equality, and justice. In essence, Africa must close the gap between normative excellence and practical implementation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the time has come for Africa to move beyond commitment on papers. The protection of rights must become preventive, proactive, and result-driven. Allow me to propose several pathways forward. One, we need to take the bold step to domesticate the African Charter and the Maputo Protocol into national institutions and legislation. Two, establish national human rights implementation committees to track compliance with African courts and Commission decisions. 3. Guarantee the independence and adequate funding of national human rights institutions. 4. As well as providing predictable budgetary allocations for African Commission and Court to ensure operational independence, institute mandatory state compliance, reporting for court judgment, and public follow-up hearings before the AU Executive Council. 5. Link the Commission's early warning mechanisms to the AU Peace and Security Council for preventive actions and when rights violations threaten stability. And 6. Require human rights impact assessment for all major infrastructure, extractive and climate adaptation projects under Agenda 2063. And 7. Recognize and protect the rights of climate displaced persons and environmental defenders who represent the next frontier of human rights protection. Excellencies, as the host country of the African Commission, the Republic of the Gambia remains deeply committed to the principles and objectives of the African Charter. We are proud that Banjul continues to serve as the continental home of human rights, and we reaffirm our readiness to cooperate fully with the Commission, the Court, and all AU organs in advancing the cause of justice, dignity for all Africans. Our government continues to strengthen national institutions, enhance access to justice, promote reforms that aligns with our continental and international obligations. We also remain determined that the Gambia's journey for dictatorship to democracy will stand as a testament to resilience of human rights and the power of collective commitment. In manifestation of our commitment to this very important journey, the Republic of the Gambia ratified the AU Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls in July 2025. Marking the Gambia the second country to sign the convention. We are currently working on preparing cabinet paper for the ratification and domestication of the convention. Your Excellencies, in conclusion, human rights should not be limited to capitals and edifices with modern facilities. It should reach out to the very people whose rights we seek to protect. The grassroots, the citizens, the farmers, traders, women and children, and the very people who make up the fabric of society should be targeted in our discourse of human rights. Too often, they are marginalized, discriminated, and are victimized in situations of conflict and displacement. As such, we should always reflect and bear in our minds that these are the ones we owe a duty as a duty bearer of human rights. Let us therefore move from our comfort zones in our capitals and reach out to those who matter most and are in need of our service. Let this 85th ordinary session mark a renewed moment of resolve, a time when Africa moves decisively from declarations to delivery, from promises to practice, from vision to visible impact. As we deliberate over the coming days, may we be guided by the spirit of our Charter, by enduring values of Ubuntu, and by the conviction that the dignity of every African man, women, and child is the true measures of our progress. I want to thank you all.